Isabel, we have chosen a sample assessment material from Unit 36, which is our client-server computing systems. This is a Level 5 unit, and this assessment revolves around an investigation type project.
Oh, okay, great. And how many learning outcomes does the SAM cover?
Let's have a look. So it's covering 2 learning outcomes, Learning Outcome 1 and Learning Outcome 2.
Yeah, and what's the actual submission format?
So the submission format is that the student is expected to produce an individual written report, and in the submission format there's advice about font sizes, layout, the formal style that should be used, and referencing systems with a recommended limit of 10 pages.
I mean, as it's an investigative written report, I would expect to see in the submission format some guidance about sort of graphical representation and the visuals, so you know, charts and data and graphs. Okay. Is that something that would be appropriate for this particular?
So we need to include that in the submission format. We need to include the fact that how will they go about presenting the actual investigative element of what it is that they've produced. Okay, so why don't we have a look at the assignment brief and then return to the submission format and revisit that when we know what it is that they're expected to produce.
Yeah, good point, because we might be making amendments in the assignment brief that would have to be highlighted in submission format as well.
Okay, so this is the assignment brief.
Yeah, I've had a look, and what I've noted is that you've got given a record captured from internet as first point for the students, but are the students expected to do that themselves, or is that going to be provided to them, that information?
I mean, we could provide them with that data, but I think given that this is a Level 5 unit, given all of the other content that the students have covered up until this point, and given the time of the year that they're doing this assignment, I think it is more appropriate to expect the students to be able to produce that data themselves.
Yeah, and at Level 5 you would expect they would be capable of doing so.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, in the written format there, it talks about options for interface using Wireshark, but I know some students will use other tools, so are we just specifying that they have to use Wireshark and stipulating that, or are we allowing them to use their own tools as well?
I think that's something that we can leave to the discretion of the student. I think if we rewrite this section and say, you know, options for interface, for example, Wireshark, because as you say, other students will have other tools that they're used to, they would prefer to use. So I think we could use that as an example, and students can choose their own tool. But I think from a tutor perspective, you would need to be aware of what tools students were using. And if a student was choosing a tool that wasn't appropriate, maybe have a chat with them, support them, guide them in the right direction of what tools they should be using.
Yeah, I agree actually. I mean, if we're allowing them to choose their own tools, the tutor would have to monitor that and make sure they've chosen the appropriate ones. All right, just looking at the report then, we've got 7 elements to the report. And do you think those are sufficient at meeting all the criteria that's given?
So let's have a look at the assessment criteria that go with LO1 and LO2.
Because when I'm looking through here, what I'm seeing is, for example, in M2 we've got design a model, and that leads on to the D1, which is design a realistic model to realise a function. But actually going back and looking at these 7 points here, we've got explain and list particular models, but I'm not seeing any reference to actually designing a model, so I'm not sure that we're covering sufficiently there the M2 and the D1.
Okay, I agree. I think that we've got all the other assessment criteria covered, but I don't think it's very, very clear where M2 and D1 are being evidenced. So I think a possible solution to this is have our report as part 1 of the assignment and create a new part 2 where the student actually produces that design schematic to allow them access M2 and D1 in this particular assignment.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good way forward, actually, in splitting that up. So going back then to the submission format, we'd have to make that very clear in the instructions given what would be related to part 1 and what would be related to part 2.
So we will have submission format part 1. We'll keep all this element of how to go about the report we want them to produce. We will include details of how to produce the evidence for the investigations that they've done, the data that they've captured, maybe how they went about capturing it, what it is that they've taken out of that data. And then in part 2, then we can discuss what we'll cover in part 2. Just looking at part 1, We have here, we've said that they're going to use the Harvard referencing system. Will we suggest a specific referencing system?
It's good practice to give them a reference system. I mean, we actually have Harvard reference system on the SAM because clearly that supports the progression to level 6 for students here in the UK, but these are going to be delivered internationally. So I think if there's another reference system that's appropriate for a particular country that will support progression for students in that particular destination, then that would be appropriate as well.
Okay.
So we're not saying it has to be Harvard referencing system, but we do need to be specifying a reference system in there, and also the bibliography that has to be included with all work that's submitted. Yeah.
So we might say referenced using a referencing system, for example, the Harvard referencing system. And it also says that the recommended limit is 10 pages. Do you feel that's a good amount of information for them to get across what it is that we want them to get across?
Yeah, because it is good practice as well, not just to highlight referencing system, but also to set the parameters for either the page limit or the word count can be given as well. That's acceptable. So you're clearly setting the parameters for the student. They know what input needs to be put in, what the expectation is for that particular submission. As long as we're not penalising students on not meeting word counts. Or the page limit, but it's there as guidance.
So we need to include that,
absolutely,
not penalising students in there.
Keep that in.
And then for part 2, for our submission format, I think that the best way to submit that is for the student to actually produce the design itself. So it might be in a PowerPoint slide or on a poster, with the view that the student will present that design to their tutor.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the tutor then can ask some questions, and when they do the submission and make it clear again in the instructions that they'll be submitting, not only the slides but possibly speaker notes or their presentation notes.
Okay.
Okay.